those of you who are joining me for the first time, this is a broadcast I've entitled Strategy Sunday with Dr. Ken. For those of you who do not know me, I am Dr. Ken Richmond. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist, veteran and corporate leadership coach. I help corporate leaders pinpoint their leadership problems so they can develop thriving workplaces with decreased turnover, improved workplace morale, and increased organizational performance. Strategy Sunday is a way for us to engage in some degree of a discussion about a specific issue that can be applied to the workplace specifically, but also generalizable to any kind of relationship that we may have. And as you know, we all live dynamic lives and we manage various relationships. So my goal is to present content that hopefully will be valuable to you and that you can use on a day-to-day basis. So today's topic is called the N-word, right? How to use it more effectively. And the N-word that we're going to be talking about today is negotiation, right? Negotiation. So for anybody who had other thoughts about what we were going to be talking about today, it is negotiation. That is the term that we're going to be discussing. So let's start off first by defining what is negotiation. A simple definition would state that it is a formal discussion between two or more parties with the goal of reaching an agreement on a particular issue. Okay, that's the basic definition of negotiation. And I really had a perfect plan in my head where we're going to talk about things like BATNA, which is basically the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. These are just terminologies that I was going to throw out there. ZOPA, Z-O-P-A, which is zone of possible agreement when it comes to engaging in a negotiation process with another individual or individuals. And then I turned on the news this weekend. And I had to shift my focus because seeing what I saw, hearing what I heard, and then watching a rather lengthy video about an event that occurred where an individual's life was taken, it caused me to shift focus because I think we are not only negotiating, I think the term negotiations, it doesn't only apply to the workplace or simple relationship. I think it applies on a more global scale, or even a societal scale for that matter. So I wanted to shift focus and I wanted to get right down to the topic of this evening, start off with my 4 tips, break them down, and then entertain and answer some comments that hopefully you guys have, okay? So my 5 tips when it comes to negotiations or doing that negotiation process are as follows. 1, ask for what you want. 2, justify your position. 3, stay solution focused. 4, implement. And 5, reassess. Those are my 5 tips. So let's break them down. Let's break down what a negotiation process will look like when we can appreciate these 5 tips in mind. So asking for what we want. That seems to be self-explanatory, right? A simple want of Black Lives Matter, a simple want of I want a raise, a simple question or a want of I don't need you to go to the club anymore, right? There's no more clubbing. If you're going to be in this relationship, there's no more clubbing. If you're going to be in this relationship or maintain this job, you can't drink, you can't use drugs. Ask for what you want. And I think the biggest thing that we need to do when we're asking for what we want is to be very clear, very concrete in many cases about what it is we are asking for. When it comes to the stuff, the event that I saw in the news, the broadcast, it is, or stuff that's been happening for the last 2 weeks, isn't that clear what is being asked for? If we look back years, has it not been clear what we've been asking for? Okay, it's a negotiation process. If we look at it that way, maybe that's the way we need to look at it. Maybe that's the way we need to shift focus, right? change that mindset, change that perspective of asking for what we want from the job, relationship to society and on a global scale. I think it may serve us in a different way. Just something to think about. It is really just something to think about. My goal is to probe some thinking, get the wheels in our brains to start, clicking a little faster, right? Oil it just a little bit so that we can make some kind of movement forward, because I think we are all stuck. So again, first tip, asking for what we want and being very clear about it. The second tip that I want to dig into, it's justify your position. Justify your position. Again, from my perspective, what I would say, a very basic statement, a very basic tip. However, I think it needs to be stated as such. We need to justify our position. In a relationship, if you told that loved one that, hey, you know what? I don't need you drinking anymore. I don't want you going to the club anymore. The justification could be you're better, you're more personable, you're more coherent when you're sober, right? Or you are more pleasant to be around when you're not under the influence of whatever it is, okay? Or an employer may say, you're the best employee we've had. We want to engage in some degree of a process to figure out how can we move you forward within our organization. In some cases, that may move somebody outside of the organization, but that's a win-win on all fronts. Or an employee to an employer, hey, this is the best job I've ever had. I want to do the best quality of work for you because this is where I'm at, okay? And when you're justifying your position, when you're asking for something, those things have to be in place, right? If you're asking for a raise and you can't justify why you need that raise, it makes it a hard sell, right? And as you can imagine, in any negotiation process, there's a buyer and a seller. There's somebody who wants something and there's somebody who has this thing that you're looking for, right? So we always have to be mindful of those relationships and being very clear about justifying our position. If I'm in a department where I was able to retain a certain number of employees over a few quarters, I can justify why I would request or why I would be interested in having a raise. Whereas if I'm just somebody who just shows up and does the bare minimum, maintains the status quo, that may be a harder sell to justify to an employer, for example, why I may need a raise. Okay. And again, I'm doing my best to stay neutral. I'm doing my best to not interject some influences of the media right now. I will have you interject that for yourself and use these tips and apply them generally in that area. But when you see things that are happening that are senseless, I mean, it really just gets under your skin. It gets under my skin. So this is definitely going to be one of my harder live streams to do, but I will get through it. The third tip is staying solution focused. What is the end goal? Notice I didn't say problem focused or problem oriented. Because those are just negative ways of just kind of understanding a situation. If we're looking at the end result, if we're looking at a situation where everybody should matter in terms of what they do, the quality of the work that they do, the relationship that they're trying to maintain, staying focused on the solution is going to be key to really bringing something to reality. Otherwise, it's just a exercise in futility. It's an exercise where, I'm sure we've all encountered these situations where we're in a room, many people are in chairs, there's a lot of words being thrown out there, and nobody really takes anything from it. I had a saying where when it comes to having meetings, I said in order to have one meeting, there is typically two other meetings that occur. There is usually a meeting before the meeting, i.e., what are we going to talk about? Who's going to say such and such? Where are we going to go? And I bet you we leave with no direction. Then the meeting happens, and whatever transpires. And then there's a meeting after the meeting, which is told you so. Nothing's happened. Nothing's changed. Things are staying the same. Whereas if we're focusing on the solution, the point of, an example would be the point of this meeting would be to get us all on the same page about a new initiative. Let that be the focus. And what does it mean by being on the same page? Right? It could mean just making sure all the departments are communicating more effectively. It could be making sure that, for a family gathering, we minimize issues that can happen when, too many folks get together. Just those little things that we can think about, but we want to stay solution focused, focus on the end goal, have the end in sight, instead of being stuck on the little nuances of where we're at. Because in a negotiation process, there's nothing that's going to move forward in a negotiation process if we get stuck on the rather distracting details, as I would call it. Okay. Let me. I know that was a lot. So those are first 3 tips. We'll get to the last two, but why don't I just take a moment to check in with folks who have been able to sign on, and let me just read a few folks and go from there. Okay. All right. Hey, Dr. Lakeisha, thank you for joining. Dr. Carol, thank you for joining. Dr. Herbert, Dr. Lisa Herbert, thank you for joining. Hey, Dr. Green, thank you for joining as well. Yes, assertiveness. Yes, it is clear to me. Yes, this topic of negotiation. See, Amber talked about #passion. Hey, Dr. Dr. Erica, thank you for joining. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. Appreciate you guys for joining in. Hey, Colonel Villegas, thank you for joining in. I know you're about to get on a flight to overseas, so please be safe on your travel. All right. So getting back to the tips, the 5 tips. So I went over the first 3: asking for what you want, justify your position, and staying solution focused. The fourth tip that we'll discuss is to implement, the implementation phase or implementation process. Right? What is that going to look like? Let's say you achieve your goals, you achieve exactly what you were seeking to accomplish. Now you're trying to put it in play. You got that position that you were vying for. You got it. Now what? You feel prepared? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Right? Whatever you may be going through. Now is the time to implement whatever you've negotiated. An acquisition of a new company. How are we going to incorporate those and integrate those two entities? Right? So the implementation phase is a huge phase that I think oftentimes we want to get a quick fix. We want to quickly write something and say that it's done, when it's really something that needs to be harnessed, something that needs to be nurtured, something that needs to be finessed even more or refined even more. Right? That implementation phase is critical because it means that you've moved a long distance to get to that point. The key now is to have individuals or elements in place that would help to sustain that change process or that implementation process. Okay? And when it comes to implementation, the one thing that I would caution individuals to be mindful of is to not make what are called unilateral decisions. You have to be able to appreciate diverse perspectives. You have to be able to let that information kind of sit with you for a period of time so that you have a clear understanding of what you're seeing, what you're dealing with when it comes to the negotiation process. Because as you may know, the negotiation process, as I defined earlier, is between 2 or more individuals, 2 or more parties. Sometimes multiple discussions have to occur at multiple levels if we're talking about organizations. Let's say even in the simple purchasing of a car. The implementation process of, okay, now I got the car, I gotta, get the loan paperwork, and now I gotta tell my spouse or a significant other about what you just did, right? How are you gonna pay the bills? All those things can come to mind, but if you have elements in place to manage the implementation process, to manage when things are not going well, that's gonna be key. And that brings us to the 4th or the 5th tip that I want to mention is the reassessment piece, the reassessment element when it comes to the negotiation process. And really, from what I would like to convey from this tip is that It's really where that individual or the individuals take a step back and reflect on the entire process. What worked? What didn't work? Okay? And really, really hone in on figuring out how they can improve for the next time. Because negotiations occur every day. We may not see it as such, but they are occurring every day. I can tell you, I constantly reassess my ability to interact with a patient, especially a new patient, who comes in with a resistance to being on a medication, for example, or to being referred to therapy, right? My approach when I reassess my strategies or my interaction with a patient is to say, did I make that person feel understood? Did I make them feel like what they said mattered? Did I talk too much or did I talk too little? Did I frame questions in a way that allowed them to say, that's exactly it? That you're hitting the nail right on the head. Those are buzz terms when somebody's responding to you to let you know that you're moving along the same path that they're on. Otherwise, it's a discordant. They're going in a separate direction. You're going left and they're going right. Okay? So it's always a matter of reassessing that negotiation process because we're constantly in that process. It doesn't stop. It does not stop. Those are my 5 tips. I wanted to check in again with my guests and their comments and seeing where we're at. So Dr. Lakeisha said, what is the end goal? Yeah, so if the end goal is a promotion, if the end goal is more responsibility within an organization, that's, you want to be able to focus on that. You want to be able to say, hey, when I am finished with this, master's degree, I want to be in a position of X. I want to be a director of whatever department that may be, or whatever division that may be, right? But again, I harken back to, it's always helpful to have people in positions and just people holding titles, right? So what is the end goal? Just to hold a title or hold a position where you have influence, where you actually matter, right? When you're in that negotiation process, do things that are actually going to matter, not just checking a box and keeping things moving, okay? All right, let's see. Oh, hey, Susan, thank you for joining. I appreciate your comment. Okay, all right. So again, I wanted to get on here to just give the tips for today's Strategy Sunday session. But before I leave, I have a few asks of you. So I'll be very specific with what I'm asking for you. So I want to know at least 3 things. So one would be, what topic do you want to hear about next? And as you can see, I typically frame the topics in terms of a single word. So what topic? You can pick the letter. I've already used F, or we just use N. F as in Frank, Foxtrot, and N, Nancy. So what subject matter do you want to hear about? 2, how long do you think these sessions need to be? Right? I have in my mind, maybe. Well, I'll let you guys decide. You guys tell me, because I'm working for you guys, right? I'm trying to add value to your life. So you tell me what works for you, okay? It is Sunday evening. I appreciate you guys negotiating your evening today and being here with me. I appreciate the feedback that you guys are going to give to me, right? And just let me know, how do you think this is going? Is it helpful, not helpful? Just help me kind of fine tune or refine this just a little bit, right? That's my negotiation process to you. Okay. Why? Because I want to get better. I want to get better because when I get better, I can help other people get better. Okay. So that's just my push. That's just my my message to you guys for this evening. Again, we talked about the N word being negotiations. Negotiations is a formal discussion between 2 or more parties in which we seek to get to a formal or at least a mutual agreement in terms of discussing a particular issue. I went over my 5 tips. 5 tips are asking for what you want, justifying your position, being solution focused, implementing, and reassessing. I am Dr. Ken Richmond, board certified psychiatrist and corporate leadership coach. I help Corporate leaders pinpoint their leadership issues so they can develop thriving workplaces with less turnover, improve workplace morale, and increase organizational performance. Thank you for joining me on this evening for Strategy Sunday.